Welcome to another episode of the Naughty List, where we're the self-proclaimed best in spicy book reviews. We're here to tell you if your favorite smut book or series is worth 5 out of 5 spicy chili peppers on our totally arbitrary and completely biased rating scale.
Remember, these are our personal opinions. Trigger warning, there will be mentions of sexual assault, dubious consent, and some violence. And if you have not yet read the Immortals After Dark series, there will be major spoilers ahead.
Here we're going to be talking about super serious and extremely relevant things in today's society, specifically smut, tits and ass, fairy dick, dragon boys, reverse harems, oh my. This is an NC-17 podcast, so cover the kids' ears or take us into the bathroom with you. It's going to get strangely intimate, just let it happen. Today we're going to be talking about A Hunger Like No Other, which is quite frankly 300 plus pages of god-tier content and should probably be framed on my wall. This episode is going to be totally unbiased, by the way. Ms. Kresley Cole has been a best-selling author since, I want to say, the early 2000s, and she has all my respect. A Hunger Like No Other is the first installment of her series Immortals After Dark, and this series as a whole was one of the first introductions that I had to what is now my all-time favorite trope, the popular fated mates trope. I got Kresley Cole off my mom's bookshelf, and I'm very grateful that good taste is hereditary.
That's hilarious. I would curl up in a little ball if my mom knew the books I read.
I have fond memories of grocery shopping with my mom and, wanting to urge her on because we passed by like a section of romance novels and she'd want to stop and at least check out the backs and add stuff to her list for later. So, no, I got all my taste in romance novels from her.
That's so cute.
Now, in A Hunger Like No Other, Lachlan McGreeve, a sizzling hot Scottish werewolf king, has been tortured for literal decades at the hands of vampires. And on a day that changes everything, he finds his long sought-after, predestined mate is a shy, sheltered girl who happens to be a vampire, or at least a half-vampire. And her name is Emmeline. Now, don't let my mild, tame summary turn you away. This is a rip-roaring passion fest from the get-go. I swear the first chapter will have you hooked. That has been the case for everyone I have ever made read this, and that's a lot of people. It does take Lachlan about half the book to get over the fact that, yes, she's part vampire, but obviously the side of him that recognizes her as his mate wins out. The book is lining up the ongoing plot for the entire series, which is that every 500 years there's a mass war that's meant to cull the numbers of immortals and figure out a new kind of power hierarchy. And it's starting to get to be that time again, which means that weird things are happening, more people are finding mates, there's some weird pairings, unique players on the field are being born and appearing, etc. So that's the thing that's happening. Putting aside the fact that each book title is pretty much a Swedish indie pop song, the whole idea of fated mates is such a creative, fun way of kicking up the passion from the get-go, causing that delectable layer of conflict, and making that love at first sight plot device actually seem reasonable. So I guess that's enough of my rambling. Jen?
Well, obviously, I loved A Hunger Like No Other. It's hot and spicy and just really, really sweet when it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love the enemies to lovers storyline personally. I like that more than the fated mates trope. I'm a masochist at heart, so something about them being mean to each other just does things.
Yeah, aren't we all, honestly?
And I think Cole just does the enemies to lovers perfectly. They were true enemies. Like, I want to kill you enemies. Like, yes. I would rather see the world burn than fall for you enemies.
Mm-hmm, the best kind.
Right? The one was with like the most passion and tension. And that their banter was like just really cute. Emma fought him until the very end of the book, and I love that about her. Emma isn't the type of character I would normally identify with because she's definitely, shy, a little bit meek, definitely sheltered, 100%.
Oh yeah, very sheltered.
But she was so funny. Like, she has this very dry kind of humor that, like, honestly, I cackled a couple times. And, I do love the fated mates trope, not as much as enemies to lovers, but I do really love it. And I like this book specifically because it's the type of fated mates that I imagine happens more often than not,
Mhm.
where two people who seem so wrong for each other in every way find out that they work together really well. Cole talks about how Lachlan is going to miss doing certain things. He's a werewolf, she's half a vampire, half a Valkyrie. And, werewolves have certain things that they enjoy doing that are at complete odds with vampires,
Mhm.
like sharing a meal with his family, she only drinks blood. Having gatherings during the day, the sun would literally kill her.
Mhm.
Having kids, or, doing things in the bedroom that appeal to werewolves but not vampires.
Ironically, the biting.
The biting, I mean, he loved the biting.
Yes. Ah.
And I like that it took them both a long time to fall in love, but when they did, it was really cute. Like all of those concerns that I mentioned didn't really matter to him anymore. He cared more about making Emma happy and comfortable. He didn't think about the things that he would be missing. He focused on the things he would be getting as Emma as his mate, that maybe other werewolves who had mates that were werewolves wouldn't get.
Mhm. And it's so odd, throughout the course of the series, she hasn't yet written a book with a werewolf and werewolf mates. And I feel like that would
Interesting.
be such a good pairing, maybe because it's too easy. She was like, no, they need to hate each other, they need to not get along. But like he repeatedly says throughout the book, exactly as you were saying, like as he's looking for that in a partner, he thought that he would have this sexy, luscious, passion ridden werewolf
Mm-hmm.
female mate, and he didn't. And that was a disappointment to him. And that just got me thinking about the missed opportunity, like how much fun it would be to read a story where they were like perfectly matched, in
Yeah.
their desires in bed, etc. I would love to see that.
So are all the books in the rest of the series enemies to lovers?
Pretty much, at least most of them, to my recollection.
Mm-hmm.
That tends to be a trend. And honestly, I think it's because those two tropes tend to work really well together.
They do.
It just automatically provides the kind of conflict that you're looking for. Like you were saying, this idea that these folks are so wrong for each other, but they give it a try because fate says that they're supposed to be paired and they actually turn out to be a great ship. This is a really common theme throughout the series. So you get the folks who hate each other, but whoops, fate says you two are perfect, so go ahead and boink.
And the tension is just flying off the page. It's so
Right.
good. I love how like that relationship progresses because at first Lachlan just did not want to be around Emma unless he was horny. He didn't want to think
Mhm.
about the ways that she was different from him. But by the end of the book, he was so accommodating for her. He would do things that would give her workarounds to living a good and safe life. Like he would
Mhm.
provide those curtains that would block sunlight so that she could walk around during the day. And he would be protective of anyone that would insult her because she was surrounded by werewolves who hated her.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that goes to show like why the fated mates trope works so well with enemies to lovers, because it doesn't matter that you hate each other in the beginning. Like your instinct, your drive, and especially with the Lycae, we'll touch on this a little more later, but their instinct is to protect and care for their mate no matter what. So, he
Mm-hmm.
was horrified when he accidentally hurt her or when he didn't understand her needs, so he inadvertently wasn't taking proper care of her. That just
Mm-hmm.
horrified him because his nature is telling him he needs to take care of this girl. So, yeah, that's cute.
I love that. I love that so much. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're both like feminists who want like are gonna lead our own lives, but I think on like deep, deep down, we want a man who's just gonna protect us and take care of us and not let us lift a finger.
Oh yeah, and he's perfect for that. I love the animal ones, the ones that'll be animals in bed. The
I
werewolves
love
are.
the primal king. The primal, oh,
Yes.
oh. I'm kind of upset that Cole didn't write more books around Emma and Lachlan because I loved them together. I'm not really someone who likes reading about different couples in the same setting and same time. I prefer to read about one couple until like that relationship is over, or like I guess that story is over, and then read about a different relationship in a different setting.
That's
But
fair.
that said, The Valkyries were really cute. They were such a cute family. And, I love how much they cared for Emma. And I think I personally would identify with future books because it's about the Valkyries, correct?
Um, they definitely are some of the characters that are featured. Actually, I think if not the second, then the third. In this book, they mention one of the Valkyries, Lucia,
Mm-hmm.
and they mention another werewolf that intrudes on their abode and happens to be there when there's a fight going on, and Lucia is injured, for lack of a better term, and you'll see what I mean if you read it. But yeah, so they in this book they're setting up for at least one of the other Valkyrie to end up with someone already, and there are a couple of other Valkyrie that also end up in pairings, and they're all very cute. So you do have that to look forward to.
I feel like I'll identify with their characters a little bit more because they're definitely the badass female warrior types I usually read about. So I'm excited about reading that. And I do like how Lane has male friendships. I think having good friends in books is what makes a book go from good to great.
Absolutely. And especially male friends. I don't know. I feel like there's not always, but often a form of sisterhood. There's often female friends mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and not so many male friends. Like at least the stuff I read where the guys are like all alpha men. The only people who are really close to the alpha males are clan mates, tribe mates, that sort of thing. And they're not so much friends. So yeah, there was a really good dynamic going on, healthy relationships. We love to see that.
Exactly. And I like how Lane's friend was also kind of friends with Emma, or he was trying to get Emma to give Lane a chance. I thought that was cute.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously the smut was great. I
So
mean,
great.
Lane had this primal kink going on that was so hot. I love that animalistic thing like you were mentioning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the scenes where Emma would bite him and he would just like lose control were scorching hot. The only thing that I was a little bit about was in the very beginning, there was definitely some dubious consent going on.
Yes.
The book starts out with Lane coming to France, where Emma is, having been tortured for hundreds of years at the hands of vampires. And when he finds out that Emma is a vampire, he's kind of torn between his feelings of like this lust because she's his mate versus like absolute horror and disgust at having to be mated to a vampire.
Right.
So he like does things that are very dubiously consensual. Like Emma, at times it's not even dubious consent. At times it's Emma saying no and he does it anyways.
That's what I was going to say. I would go so far as to say it's sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
From my memory, she never really says no, but it's clear that she's uncomfortable with it, that she wants him to stop. But there's also, that, oh, well, she's wet, she's enjoying it kind of vibe to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're okay with the idea of a slightly controlling man who's taking control here and not really picking up on the lady's cues in terms of I don't want anything to happen. He definitely does not take it slow. I mean, he goes into it,
Yeah.
like you said, like kind of taken over from kind of the lust taking him over. He doesn't even introduce himself. He's like, all right, let's do it here and now, and kind of expects her to just follow along. So, yeah, I would go so far as to call it straight up sexual assault. That it was a little disturbing if you look at it from that perspective, but
I think I hated Lachlan in the beginning because of that. Like I don't think we were supposed to really like him.
yeah.
Now I can separate fantasy and reality. Like in reality, that would make me want to commit murder. Like I would kill a man.
Mm-hmm.
But on paper, in a fantasy setting, there was a little something attractive about it. Now it's not like the fact that she said no and he did it anyways. That's not what's attractive. It was the fact that he just needed her so bad, and like he
Right.
was so in control or so out of control of himself that he just
Right.
couldn't help it.
That he was overwhelmed. Imagining that you're in that position where a man wants you that badly. That's the attractive part about it.
Exactly. And there were moments where just like the things that he would say, like he would compliment her or like admire her or like say things that were just so hot in the moment. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's
Mm-hmm.
it's very good writing, Cole. And again, I want to emphasize that we both recognize that this is fantasy, and in reality, this is the furthest thing we would want. So I think that's an important distinction to make.
Absolutely.
Also, the scenes where Lachlan gets jealous, oh, amazing. There's
That
just
is an
something.
ongoing thing. And
Oh, really?
well, that's another thing that I like about the fated mates trope. You know, there's so many opportunities for not only the conflict, but the jealousy, the overprotectiveness, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the going from 0 to 60, like Lachlan did. Like that tends to be a running thing in this series because of that fated mates trope. As soon as you see the girl, she's yours. So you're
Mm.
going to do whatever you can to keep her, whatever you can to protect her, and whatever you can to make her feel good. So that's yeah, there's a lot of the jealousy, and I think it's pretty cute.
I love that. There's just something about reading about a man that's pining after his girl.
Mm-hmm.
So cute.
Yeah, I have to agree with pretty much all of your points. I think the Like are some of my favorite guys throughout the series as well, mainly for the accent as well as the animalistic side and that passion that you get.
In future books, are the men not always like a?
No, they're not. Yeah, you get a mix. You get a couple of demons, a couple of vampires. There's a lot. One that's another thing I like about this series is you get a taste of many different characters, and you get a taste of the different dynamics, the different cultures that you get from these different fantasy races. So that's really interesting as well. You see like everyone does things a little differently. The demons, for example, when they identify someone as a mate, they can't just immediately recognize the person on sight. They don't know for sure until they actually have sex with the person, because demons can't ejaculate unless they're inside of their mate. For the first time, they can't ejaculate.
Wow.
So the demons, you know, historically within the novel are very sexual creatures, and they call it attempting, where they'll have sex with a lot of other women trying to determine who their mate might be. So that's like a fun kind of cultural note for the demons. At
So,
least that's how it's supposed to go. But I will say it's they tend to recognize the mate by sight anyway, and then
oh, okay.
just to be sure, they go ahead with the sex. But
I'm
usually,
just double checking.
yeah. But so that's fun. And then they have like different words for the mates. Like for vampires, their mate is a bride. I just thought that was a fun, creative note. So yeah.
From what I understand, Emma couldn't tell that Lachlan was her mate. So do vampires not have mates?
So vampires do have mates, but from what I was understanding is that sometimes the ladies don't recognize it as strongly as the men do, first
Mm-hmm.
of all, and then also it might be different from race to race. So, for example, Lachlan specifically mentions in the book, if she had been another Like, then she would have also recognized him on sight, and they would have had hot, passionate sex.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that she didn't was very frustrating to him, because he was feeling all this need. He knew immediately that she was his mate, and she had no idea, and she wasn't letting it happen. So that contributed to the frustration as well. But it does kind of vary from race to race a little bit as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Now, Cole writes the Scottish accent pretty well. Like, I was hearing it in my head, and I was by
Yes, she
myself saying
does.
some of their lines out loud for fun. You know, like, don't go there. You know, I have a terrible Scottish accent, but I was trying. And I've always been a werewolf slut all the way. Like, vampires have their own allure, but there's something about that growly, animalistic side that we
Wait,
were
I
talking
get
about.
it. I was a
Mm-hmm.
Jacob fan my entire life, and now I
Girl,
know
same.
why.
Girl, same. I was absolutely a werewolf person. Like, vampires are cool and all, but they don't have the passion. You know, like a
No.
werewolf will like throw you down and, you know, in book terms, rut you. And I don't know. I don't know. They make it sound hot. They really do.
No, I get it. It's the primal kink, girl. I get you.
The primal kink. That's what it is. But yeah, Team Jacob all the way.
Yes.
And most of the males throughout this series, again, because of that fated mates trope, they end up very loving and protective, even if they're the less outgoing and emotional ones. But like A specifically, like I mentioned, are known to be particularly passionate and emotional in everything that they do. They feel strongly, they love,
Mm-hmm.
they protect, they are very tight with their clan. You know, they have strong family bonds. They're people of the earth. You know, they eat, drink, and fuck types. That's what the Lycae are. And
Mm-hmm.
then on the other hand, you have Emma, who's described numerous times as being timid and gentle. She's technically half vampire, but she was raised by the Valkyries. So she has the vampire side that's a little more calm, collected, and then she gets some of her personality from the Valkyries, where she really is a fighter. You know, even if she says she's constantly scared and timid and gentle, she will, stand up for herself.
Yeah,
And we see more of that as the book progresses. We see some character
definitely.
development. And I think Lachlan brings it out of her too. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of what makes them so perfect for each other. She kind of helps keep him level headed, and he kind of helps her get out of her shell and explore her more base nature side.
Yeah.
And that's why they work.
You know that quote, a woman is like a tea bag. You don't know how strong they are until you put them in hot water.
No, I've never heard that.
Well, that's a quote. And
Okay.
I feel like that's who Emma is. Like she never, her entire life, she didn't have to be the strong one. She had a family of Valkyries that would protect her. And then as soon as she had to fight for herself and the people she loved, she did it.
Yes, she did. Maybe she's like peppermint then, where at first you're like, this is a herbal tea. This doesn't even have any caffeine in it. And then you like put it in the water and then it's like strong. Yeah, I don't know.
Sure.
Oh.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Um, I also love how Cole manages to have so many fun, unique characters, especially in a series so long. Like each book, and I know you said you don't like books that focus on a different couple every time, but each couple is so much fun. Each couple is so unique. Each character has so much going for them, even though it is the same fated mates trope over and over. A lot of them are enemies to lovers over and over. It's done really well, and you really can't complain. You get attached to characters from the first book that you see blossom throughout the series. And, like I said, at least a couple of the other characters introduced in this book get their own mates later on. So that's fun. I do love the Valkyries. You're introduced to them for the first time in this first book. And I felt like she really brought this fantasy race alive. There's obviously Valkyrie are part of mythology, but in terms of filling them out and making them an actual full race, full characters, she did a great job of being creative with them and making them warriors, but also they have weaknesses. They're attracted to shiny things, so there was that aspect that she added. They were really human in that they had taken to gaming and movies and human clothing, and they were just having a blast. They were basically one big sorority living in that house, and it was so much fun. So that sort of action, building the world of hers, fleshing out those characters that she does is really brilliant.
It is. It absolutely is.
As well as you see the family dynamic. Emma has her loving all-female support. You don't really see as much of the Like a Clan bonds in just the first book, but that they continue to expand on, and you do get to see a little bit of what's going on in the clans and how close they all are and how they all care for each other. So there's a loyalty that each of them have to their respective families that I think also ties into why they're supposed to hate each other, but unfortunately they're just so damn horny. There are 2 or 3 different versions of the cover that I was able to find. One version, I own a paper copy of the book, and it's just a face, and I think that's one of the newer editions. The older edition, I think, has the both of them together, and Emmeline is depicted really beautifully on that cover, but I think they could have done so much better for Lachlan. Like, the dude just kind of looks like a shadowy creep. I don't know if you saw that cover, but it's really bad. Like, the way the two of them are pictured, it just focuses on Emmeline's back. You just see her back, and then he's like holding her front, so he's behind her. And it's like okay, but I imagine Lachlan to be like long-haired Chris Hemsworth as Thor, but like Scottish.
I see that. I see that. I think of him a little bit like a buffer, but yeah. And like
Okay.
maybe like a bit more rugged in the face.
Yeah. Like Thor after getting beat up a little bit.
Hell yeah, that's what I see.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. That the cover did not do them justice. Now, we did touch on it a little bit. A Hunger Like No Other does have its dark moments. For example, Lachlan's torture is quite graphic, and he
It
tears off
is.
his own leg in order to escape when he gets a whiff of Emma's scent. So there is that, like we said, there is the sexual assault. He comes on very strong. We get that you're wild and
Mm-hmm.
excited, but Emma probably would have rather it gone a little slower. And even though he did end up helping her come out of her shell and realize her sexual side in the beginning, it definitely was a little, I don't know if we're comfortable with this,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely did become a loving, good relationship. I think part of that can be attributed to he had been tortured for 150 years and finally found
Yeah.
his mate, and there was a lot going on in his head at the time. So I would give him a little bit of leeway there.
Yeah, exactly. And personally, like I said, like I didn't really like him in the beginning, but he grows on you, and I don't think that we were
Mhm.
supposed to like be like, oh, hot Scottish man. Like we were supposed to dislike him and then understand exactly why he acted the way he did.
Yeah, and I wonder if that was especially because most people reading this book will probably be more identifying with the female character,
Mm-hmm.
just because that tends to be the audience that reads
Yes.
romance novels and smut. So I wonder if it was that we were supposed to be looking from Emma's point of view, and yes, see him as a monster in the beginning. He came out of nowhere, he hurt her, he was very scary, but yeah, like over time, you see her growing confidence. She and him bond. She realizes he's really not all that bad, and he gets better control of himself as the book goes on as well, and kind of settles into the person that he's supposed to be. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we see a lot of development in this book, and we see a lot of their relationship grow and blossom, and it does end up becoming something hot and very nice instead of being kind of what it looks like it could have been in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when I was first scripting this episode, I was like, this is easily three peppers. You know, there's only a couple of sex scenes, and they don't even go all the way until the very end of the book. Now,
Mm-hmm.
granted, when they do go all the way, it's hot.
Oh yeah.
But then I was rereading it, and I swear my face was on fire. Like I was blushing like crazy because Cole is such a talented writer. I
Oh,
have
she
to give
really
it
is.
four. She really
Mm-hmm.
is. And I have to give it four chili peppers. I do think that this book would be good even without the smut. Yes, it adds a lot, but I like the plot and that it has to do with more than just the relationship. And there's
Mm-hmm.
an external plot there that had me captivated. I think Cole could have done a better job with the external plot, but that's me being a little bit nitpicky. I haven't read the series, so who am I to really say?
I don't know if I could say this book would be good without the smut. Maybe because I've read the whole series, but I feel like that's such a hallmark of this series and
Mm-hmm.
Cole's writing. Like, I don't know. I mean, it could be good. Then it would be kind of like The Witcher, where they could have had so much more sex, but they didn't. And honestly, that was a missed opportunity. You have Henry Cavill as Geralt. Like, you really should have a lot more sex. But that's a story. We're not reviewing The Witcher.
I have so much to say, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but yeah, I would say I kind of agree. I would definitely give it a solid four chili peppers, if only for that one moon crazed sex scene, which could have been the only sex scene in the whole book. And I was still head over heels. I mean, they did a great job of building the tension throughout the book. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's
Oh, she was so
probably,
good at that.
yeah, and that's probably why it feels like there was a lot more sex than there was, even though technically, yeah, they only sealed the deal at the end. I mean, there was plenty of them being naked together and heavy petting and lustful thoughts going on. So there was definitely enough to keep you occupied and, you know, a lot of blushing going on, even if they didn't necessarily have sex until the end. So, yeah, for those who like the great tension that will hit the spot, you know, the passion just builds throughout the book until you get a really satisfying sex scene at the end. And it's just really well done overall. Anyway, I highly recommend this series as a whole, and you should definitely start here, especially if you like werewolves and vampires, the melding of modern times with fantasy, and the spicy sex. This series will not disappoint you. Literally, Cole gives us the best things in the romance genre time after time again, and yeah, totally unbiased reviews.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We upload every Wednesday morning. Follow us on social media at That's Mud Podcast, and listeners and authors alike, check out our website for more information at www.naughtylistpodcast.com to get the latest updates. We'd love to hear from our audience, so let us know what book we should cover next. Until next time, you sweet horny people.
Until next time.